Well, hello, Pine Grove Church and friends beyond. This past Sunday, we took a look at that brief imperative in Colossians chapter 3. It's actually verse 13 that says, bear with each other. Bear with each other. And we know that's not always easy. It's sometimes difficult when people get under our skin and when there's annoyances and disagreements. It's difficult to live in close relationship and joyfully embrace one another as we're called to do. But keep in mind, Paul is not talking about, when he says bear with each other, he's not talking about just what to do when someone is sinning against you. If someone is lying about you or punching you in the face or kicking your dog, Paul isn't saying, oh, just bear with that. No, sin requires a very different biblical response. We're going to get to that. But just because these areas of annoyances and disagreements don't reach that level of sin, it doesn't mean that it's easy. No way. In fact, it can be very, very difficult. In fact, if we started reading Sunday at verse 12, if we back up just one verse to verse 11, it's pretty interesting what Paul says. He's writing to this church and he says, here in this church, there's no Gentile or Jew, circumcised or uncircumcised, barbarian or Scythian, slave or free, but Christ is all and is in all. So let's unpack that verse just briefly here. Paul says, though there's Jews and there's Gentiles, there's those who are circumcised and uncircumcised, though they populate the church, they make up the church, those religious categories are no longer relevant. Those religious categories to determine who is godly, who is not, they have no relevance anymore. Or Paul goes on and talks about those who are outside of that fraternity of those who are thought of as civilized, namely the barbarians, the Scythians. The Scythians were especially in that day uneducated, crude hicks. We might think of them as kind of unenlightened, anything but the woke crowd, right? Just ignorant inbreds. And Paul says, they belong in the church just as much as anyone else. Those old cultural categories are no longer operative. Just as the old religious categories are no longer operative, these old cultural categories. And Paul goes on, slave and free. Slaves and free persons, they populated that church as well. But those distinctions were falling by the wayside. And that had to be difficult. That had to be awkward for slaves and frees to worship together and to be able to get along together. I don't think we can even begin to comprehend what it took to move past and move through those layers of superiority and shame and anger and the history of deep hurts and wounds and the privilege and the assumptions and certainly the different preferences about things and all the stereotypes, all of that mess that somehow had to be overcome for this diverse group of people to come and populate this church and authentically bear with each other and embrace each other joyfully the way we talked about. There's only one way this would ever happen. And that's also in the end of this verse 11. It's only when Christ is all and in all. It's only when Christ and His glory become our singular focus, our passion, that we would even have the possibility of overcoming some of these insurmountable barriers that Paul talks about. Hey, I love you, Pine Grove Church. Keep up the good fight. Keep up this good fight of lifting high and exalting Jesus Christ overall. God bless you. Have a great day. And keep in mind tomorrow, the Zoom class, where we're going to get into the Bible and get the Bible into us. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.